welcome. Tell me how to say your full name, because I know is it just Noah, or is there a full name to that?
It's Elenoa.
Elenoa. Yeah. So it is spelled, sound like it's spelled.
Yes, it's exactly how it's spelled.
What is the background of that?
So my mom is Tongan.
Okay.
So it's Polynesian.
Okay.
I'm half Tongan. My dad was in the Peace Corps, so he went over there, and she was actually his language instructor. And after his time in the Peace Corps, I think during, they like started dating, and then they got married. So I was actually born overseas.
You can't be president?
I can't be president. I know.
That's too bad.
Ruins my campaign.
Yeah, that's
right there.
Elenoa. Do you wish more people called you Elenoa? Do most people call you Elenoa, or do you go by Noah on purpose?
As a kid, I preferred Noah because everyone would mess Elenoa up. But as I've grown,
for sure,
when people can nail it and say Elenoa, I love that. So I've kind of like shifted. I've shifted more towards Elenoa as introducing myself.
Yeah. I'm a big nickname fan, but I think nicknames should be personal. Like, I want someone to come up with their nickname for me versus being like, oh, I just go by PJ, or I just go by this, because then it feels less like relational, and it feels more just like, this is my title, this is what you call me.
What do you go by?
Dave. So officially I'm David, is my name. But I was homeschooled up until middle school. Yeah. And that's why I'm so successful socially. But when I got to middle school, someone just started calling me Dave. And I just kind of fit. And there were other Davids. And so there were fewer Daves. And I still feel like most of the Daves I know are like the 50-year-old Uncle Daves that everyone has.
Right.
So I've just kind of gone with it. But I've always gone by my full, like, people have always been like, oh, you're Dave Hawks. Like, people don't really just Dave. Like, you know, like how celebrities, you don't really think of them as just their first name. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, your name is just like Tom. Like, you don't meet a lot of Toms, but like Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks. You're like, those are like the people.
Name. Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to call you Elenoa because I think that's a really beautiful name. Thank you. I read it and I'm like, oh, that's not what people say though. So yeah. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
This is actually the first time we're meeting in person.
It is, yeah.
We have talked in the DMs for a little bit. We have some shared friends, and all that. But this is the first time we're meeting, so thanks for being here. And I'm super excited to get to chat. So I really just want you to tell me a little bit about what it is that you do, because you do a lot of things, and you do some really unique things in general.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that.
What I do is, that's a big question. In terms of work, I would say it's like, I'm a data analyst for a big company. Okay. But mostly what I do is coach. I'm a posing coach. I'm a bodybuilding coach. I'm a lifestyle coach. So I have like the role of educator, mentor for people. But in addition to that, like, I'm a bodybuilder myself, so I'm a professional bodybuilder.
Wait, let's not just like gloss over that.
It, not the headlines.
You're a professional as in you actually have your pro card.
Yes.
You don't just compete. Not that just competing is not the same, but there is a level, like an objective standard of you placed higher than second or higher nationals. Mm-hmm. Is that how it works?
Yes. I won first in my height class. So for national shows, what they do is it's by height generally for women.
How they first like categorize it?
Yeah, that's how they categorize it. And depending on the national show, it could be like first or second place gets their pro card. But I did nationals, and that was first and second got pro cards. So, but I won first, which is cool because I think like getting a second place pro card, that would hurt a little bit, but it's still an achievement.
Right.
But yeah, I'm very happy that I got first.
Yeah, for sure. There's no doubt that it's like you're 100%. Well, congratulations. And that was last year? 2021.
2
years ago. Wow. Yeah. So you've been pro for a while.
Yes.
Did your life totally change when you became a pro?
It didn't. No, not.
Oh, no. Are you saying that just as soon as you achieve your goals, not everything automatically flips?
Yeah, no, it did not radically change my life. It was an achievement for sure.
Which is huge.
Yeah, but as far as like who I am, it was kind of like, okay, I summited one mountain and what's the next mountain? So I achieved what I wanted. I
Right.
celebrated that night, like went out to dinner, did the whole thing. And then the next day was kind of like right back to
life.
Yeah, life.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I kind of feel like, you, as soon as you achieve a goal, there's almost like a reset. You're like back to square one.
Yep.
You're like back to now the next thing. And I've talked to some people who are basically have said, as soon as you get your pro card, you go from like, now you're the bottom of the best. So like you were the best of the amateurs and now you're the worst of the best.
Yes. The way that my coach put it the very next day, he was like, you are now the bottom pool. Yeah. Like he was like, you got 4th place in the overall. Mm-hmm. So he's like, you are the 4th worst, like IFBB
That's
pro.
some perspective.
Yeah. And I was like, good to know.
Yeah, that keeps you grounded. It's like when you get famous, you're like, oh, I need my family and the people around me to like remind me that I'm awful as a person at times, and I can have all the things
that you're still
human, and all of that. Well, that's awesome. So you're a bodybuilder professionally, and then you're a coach as a bodybuilder, and in fitness in general, but then also a life coach. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Well, not life coaching,
right?
In the sense of,
here's how you spend your money. Here's how you do your relationships. Yeah. Here's how you do all the life things. Yeah, right.
Because there are a lot of life coaches. So just to clarify, but like the lifestyle coaching that I do, it's people who they know they want to change in terms of their fitness, but they don't really know how. Or maybe they've been in the gym, they just don't see the progress that they're expecting. They're like, I go to the gym, I eat healthy, but I don't see results.
Right.
I'm there to help guide them and fine tune and maybe help them unlearn some of the misconceptions that they have and help them get the results.
And you're a part of a team. Mm-hmm. What's that? How does that structure work? How does that process work?
So I am an independent contractor for Team Mihaly.
Okay.
So I'm a Team Mihaly coach. But previous to that, I was just doing it on my own. I was just a coach. And then Justin approached me and he said, I'd love to have you come onto the team. Our values aligned, our visions aligned. And honestly, it was an honor. I was like, oh my gosh, you want me to join the team as a coach, like on staff? So it's been incredible, honestly. It's opened a lot of doors and opportunities because instead of just being by myself, I have the support of all the other Team Mihaly coaches. I have the resources. Yeah. If I have something that I've never encountered before, like a health issue or anything really, like with my clients or with myself, right. I have people that I can reach out to that can support me in that way. And I've just learned a ton from them, but it also helps in terms of like competitive. I'm a very competitive person. So being around a staff that is very competitive and we're constantly driving each other, that I feel like has just changed the way that I operate day to day. Instead of being lax about it, I'm always like, okay, how can I push to the next level? Because they're constantly elevating.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's helpful to have that team, especially when you're like, I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Someone else, please help me with the answer.
Someone, please.
So bodybuilding is not exactly something people just stumble into or just decide one day, oh, I'm going to do that. And you obviously have taken it to the you've taken it all the way to the professional level. It's not a common sport, and it's probably even less common for women to do, I would imagine. At least in terms of what I've seen and what I see online or just in general. Like people know about Arnold.
Yeah.
Like across the board mainstream. But it's more of a I guess it's a smaller community.
Right.
How did you decide that that's what you wanted to dedicate up to now, kind of this portion of your life to?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was one of those things that I knew I wanted to do, and then sort of impulsively, like how I make a lot of my life decisions, I was like, I think I should just do it. I had been in the gym previous to like starting competing, but once I did my first show and I saw what I could do with my body, I saw what I could do with my mindset and just how far I could really push myself, I just wanted more of that. Like it gave me a dopamine rush, like it gave me a high getting on stage, achieving it. And then I just knew I had a lot to learn. Like I was like, okay, I know nothing about this sport. I just stepped on stage, and something that's like a little bit unique about my journey is I've never really experienced loss. So I won my very first show and I kept winning. I went to nationals and I got 10th place, but like for your first national showing, 10th place isn't so bad. Like that, you know, I was happy with that. That wasn't a loss for me. And then continuing when I joined Team Mihaly, same thing. I came and competed in Texas. I won my class. I won the overall, went to nationals, got 3rd. And so jumping from 10 to 3, again, like not really a loss. That's another win. And then I went to nationals again and I got my pro card. So I think
just crushing it nonstop.
It feels good, but it's also a little daunting because you can't
expectations are
up. You can't do that at the pro levels. And I know that realistically. I can dream. Of course I want to win my pro debut and go straight to Olympia, of course. But it's not realistic because at the pro level everybody's on point. You know, there's really no room for error. And this is going to be my very first pro season. But I think having that pressure that I put on myself of like, I've never experienced a loss, like that also kind of keeps me going back to the sport because I want to feel that loss and then overcome it. Like I want the wins.
Yeah.
I want to win.
That's crazy. Well, congratulations. First of all, that's awesome. To be able to have that kind of success. Tell me about social media, and because you kind of have become an influencer of sorts.
Yeah.
Just from your natural success, your personality and your desire to lead others and to coach, right? Like leaders naturally lead and find ways to lead in our culture. Social media has kind of become one of the primary channels to influence others. Were you active on social media? Were you someone that created stuff, that posted, that just kind of kept people up to date with your life prior to taking this fitness journey seriously professionally? Or was that a byproduct of like, oh, now that I'm trying to do this, I realize I now have to have a digital presence?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
And I think it's funny that you call me an influencer because I guess I don't categorize myself as an influencer.
Which is why you're one of the better ones.
Thank you. I guess it just blows my mind constantly. I'm constantly being like reminded that what I do does impact others. But to answer your question, honestly, I was on social media in high school. So before I even started fitness, it was like selfies and whatever. But as I got into the gym, I started documenting my progress, or I'd, post a gym selfie every time I go to the gym. So it was very natural for me to just be showing my life. And then as I continued competing and getting into the fitness industry and realizing that I wanted to pursue fitness, I started realizing, okay, me sharing my life actually does help others. And it helps me too, because I'm able to see my progress over time. So I used to treat Instagram as like my private diary of just progress, really, and keeping everybody like up to date on what I was doing. And then as I got into coaching, I realized my Instagram could also double as my business.
Right.
But I don't like to think of it as that. Like I don't like to think of myself as like selling things on Instagram. Like I still want my Instagram to feel like a community and family and friends and how people can keep up to date with what I'm doing.
Right. Because you've objectively had some pretty serious social media success in the reach that you have, to have what, like 7,000 followers, is not a small thing. It's not a common thing. Has that changed your kind of personal life?
In what ways?
Have you found dissonance between maintaining and being engaged and active online and being an available and or kind of accessible person to your real life friends? Has that been a challenge at all?
It has been at times. I think I've gotten a lot better at just communicating through that. But there have been times where if I'm on social media and I'm trying to respond to comments or DMs or conduct my business like through the DMs.
Right.
And I have friends texting me. I have people in my real life who are reaching out to me via phone. I will drop the ball on those personal relationships sometimes. And it is something I've gotten better with with practice. But I would say, yeah, there's been like some challenges there. Mm-hmm. There's been like some probably sour taste left in my friend's mouth. They're like, oh, you're posting on Instagram, but you can't reply to my text. And at the end of the day, the friends that like have stuck with me and have understood like, oh, she's busy, she's doing kind of her thing, and they know that they're not entitled to my response, like those are the friends that I've kind of kept up with.
Yeah, that's I keep having this conversation with people about the balance of relationships, digital and real life, because there seems to be a smaller and smaller divide, because now what we talk about in person is the things we saw on the internet. Like we laugh about memes that we saw. We ask about, hey, did you see that thing I sent you yesterday? So there's the divide between personal and digital seems to be shrinking a little bit. But the conversation around, I'm watching someone be engaged online, but they're not getting back to me, is like a perpetual thing that we all, I think, are feeling.
Right.
But nobody wants to say that out loud because it sounds really petty to say, hey, you posted 3 things on your story and I texted you about plans for later this week and you haven't replied. What do you think is a fair expectation of friends to have of one another in terms of that responsibility to maintaining relationships and the freedom that people should have to be engaged and be escaped into their digital world without accidentally hurting someone else's feelings?
There's a lot there. I feel like it depends on the relationship, and it depends on the person, and I guess honestly like priorities, because sometimes I could be like neck deep into my check-ins with my athletes, and if somebody important texts me and says, hey, can you get coffee Saturday at X time? Yes, like I can respond to that pretty immediately. But I guess it's more so like for me recently, the struggle has been like having casual conversation via text. Like I almost need people to get to the point or like be very upfront about intentions and like, what are you trying to get from this conversation? Because if I'm like doing my athlete check-ins and I'm getting a text like, hey, what's up? I'm sorry, but that's not a priority. What's up is I'm working. And like, I'm not going to pull myself away from work to be like, I'm working. Even though that would probably take like 5 seconds, but it's like in my head, I'm like, you know what? I'll text them later when I have the space and the capacity to hold like attention for them. Because I also think that like our attention with social media, our attention spans have just completely shot.
Right.
And I don't think it's really fair to like give the people that are important to you or like relationships in your life minimal attention. Like, I don't think that I believe that like humans are not good at multitasking. We can pretend that we are, but if you truly are trying to like invest into a relationship, the energy and attention there, like you need to focus on that in the moment. And that's even translated through a text. So for me personally, like if it depends on the situation, the person, the message. But I do appreciate like when people can be honest with me. And so I do the same with people. So I have had those conversations like in group messages, for example, like even with like the Team Mihaly staff, like where I send them a text and nobody responds. And I'm like, y'all are on your phones all day. I know that you saw my message. And so I'll send another message. I'll be like, hey, I know that y'all are busy, but I really need to know, are we doing this on Saturday? Like simple yes or no, you know, because at that point it's affecting like our plans and our work. So long story short, I just feel like it's very situational. It's very dependent on the person and the context.
I don't have an an answer for it either. I see that when someone is the offender towards you, people are you feel very justified in, no, you should be getting back to me. And then when you are the offender to someone else, you feel very justified in, oh, I'm busy and I have things to do. It's not fair for you to expect this of me.
Right.
And I rarely run into people who have the self-awareness and the humility to say, yeah, I'm bad at that. Like, yeah, I'm not good at texting people back, and I love Instagram. And not even like that as a value judgment, but just as this is my guilty pleasure of sharing funny memes. And for some people, they think of their part of their relationship in the world as their generic Instagram audience. And that's a relationship in their mind. And so posting funny memes is in some way getting up on stage and doing their talent for their audience. And that's a legitimate relational effort to some people. And so I think what you said of like, it really depends on the person. And it also depends on the intention. Because when someone says, hey, what's up? It's like, to answer your question is to invite more questions and to invite more conversation. Yeah. And I don't have the time. And so I will just be perpetually frustrating to you throughout this entire conversation because I can't be involved and engaged the way I want to be.
Yep.
Or the way you want me to be. But to say, hey, can't talk right now, then puts them in a position where they're like, okay, but now are you going to reach it back out to me when you're ready? Or do I just need to keep checking in? Because at some point that person then starts to feel needy and potentially pushy, and no one really wants to feel that way, even though we might be that way. And so no one's like having this conversation. They're just doing it or not doing it and then complaining to everybody else about it. At least that's been my experience.
I appreciate you saying that perspective though, because you could solve, like, I know for me, like, I could solve all of that within my own life by just communicating. Like, if I say, hey, I'm busy, I'm working, I'll check back in with you at 5 p.m. Like, that could be an easy solution, right?
But then it makes you accountable to doing that. And so then you end up setting yourself up for failure, depending on what you can actually be.
Right. Yeah. That's the tricky part, because I have done that before, and then you disappoint people. Like, my best friend and I had a call scheduled last Friday. Neither of us called each other. And then she texted me Saturday. She's like, damn it. And I was like, oh no, we forgot.
Right.
And it's like, we played phone tag all Saturday because we were busy. She's on the East Coast. And then Sunday we had like a 15-minute conversation, and she's my best friend. So she understands, like, she's in med school, I'm working, like, our schedules just don't align that often. Right. So it was like, but she and I have that established relationship where it's not hurting each other. It's just like, dang, like we have dropped the ball again and again and again. But if it's a new friendship, like, I could definitely see that just making somebody feel a type of way.
Yeah. It's something we all feel and we all process alone, and we get frustrated, and then we feel guilty about being frustrated because we're like, oh, I shouldn't be upset, but it's my desire to connect with this person. It's my expectations minus reality equals disappointment, right? Like, that's often the situation. And then you're like, well, do I talk to them about it? Is it fair for me to talk to them about it? What's my relationship with them? Because for a lot of people, bringing it up makes it 100 times worse. Because the defensive mechanism is, whoa,
right?
We're not tight like that, or we're not, I have a life. You're now projecting your insecurities and selfish needs onto me, and that's not fair. And
they just kind of ping pongs, like,
right? Because people rarely want to be like, yeah, I'm sorry, or they or they don't want to commit to something that they can't maintain. And so the problem is that if you never address your problems, you don't have to face resolving them.
Yeah.
As soon as you acknowledge, I'm a bad friend at times, you are then accountable to doing something about that. if you claim to be someone who doesn't want to be a bad friend. Otherwise, you're not congruent with who you say you want to be and who you are. Doesn't match up. And that's everyone's least favorite type of person.
Yeah.
Is people who don't practice what they preach.
That reminds me of something that we are going to do a podcast on it as well, but it's something that I've been just like experiencing just of late that you're just totally hitting on, just identity shift, like where you are trying to, so for me, I'll just use myself as an anecdotal example. I'm trying to be a bikini Olympian, and there's that incongruency sometimes where if I'm too tired, I don't pose, but then there's that guilt of like an Olympian would do her freaking posing even if she's tired.
Yes.
And then that starts to build up like guilt and shame, and you start to, I kind of joke about it, but you almost start to gaslight yourself in some ways because you know that you're fighting against the identity that you're trying to shift into. And I think people really struggle with, they want to be the best version of themselves, but then they act not according to their own values or their own goals or who they're trying to be. And then it creates that dissonance, and there's just that internal battle.
Yeah. Well, I've ended up talking about this book like 5 times in the last 2 weeks, because a coworker of mine had brought it up to me, but we were talking about why branding is more important than marketing. Why, like, instead of just spending money on ads.
What is the difference between brand and marketing?
So marketing is, how do I get as many eyes on me as possible?
Okay.
The pursuit of, I'm going to spend money on billboards, on ads. I'm going to create, Instagram content. I'm going to create social content. I'm going to create all these things to put myself out there so people see me and know who I am and reach out to me. Branding is all about identity. Who am I?
Ooh,
and so
interesting.
There's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't read it, so I'm paraphrasing what I know to be true about it. But one of the fundamental concepts is this idea that identity is inherently a more motivating factor than pros and cons rewards.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you want to start working out in the morning and you want to get in better shape, when the alarm clock rings at 5:30, you might sit in bed and think, okay, so if I get up and go work out, then I'll burn this many calories. I'll, have this dopamine hit that's good for me and my mental health. And if I don't do it, then I'm going to get, more out of shape or all these things. And you start thinking about, like, should I do it?
Mm-hmm.
If you ask yourself, what would an athlete do? The question answers itself.
Right.
They'd get up and go to the gym, because the identity of an athlete is to get up and go to the gym.
Yep.
And so there's this difference between, like, I don't want people to not like me, and so I want to behave well in the world so that I can avoid consequence of people's not meeting expectations. Or I can say, I want my identity to be someone who is a good friend, who is present, who is loyal, and who serves those around them. And then you don't get to argue. You have no excuse for why you didn't call someone when you said they were going to call them.
Mm-hmm.
Because the identity of a good friend is to do what you say you're going to do, to mean what you say, and to act in a way that's according to the things that you've said, who you want to be. And that's really not common that I've seen.
Yeah.
Because the conversation I often have with people, and this is why I'm probably more polarizing than most, is I'll say, hey, I think you're telling me something you don't want to be telling me, which is that I'm not important to you. Because your behavior, all indications point to, like, I'm not a priority, which is okay. If I don't need to be a priority in your life, that's totally fine. You don't owe me, like, your best friendship. I'm not like deserving of anything from you. But when you tell me that this relationship is something that you value highly, that you have said with your words that you want to prioritize, and then you don't,
your actions speak.
Now I want to get some clarification.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's interesting, is people say things that they mean when they say it, which is, oh my gosh, like, yes, I'd love to go do these things with you. And, oh, you're into that? I'm into that too. Let's go do it.
Right.
and have no idea or don't think about what that might actually mean.
Yeah.
And if that other person were to then say, hey, what's up? Like, I haven't heard from you in 3 weeks and you said you wanted to go to the gym together. If that other person then was like, whoa, I'm busy, I have a life. You're like, come on. Like, it's I'm not projecting expectations that I set. You set the expectation, and I was just trying to hold you to what I thought you were trying to say. But what do you do about that? What do you do when someone just responds like that?
Is that like accountability? Is that lack of accountability or trying to hold somebody accountable? And that's
right. It's like, what's a fair pursuit of holding someone accountable for what they have said when you don't necessarily you haven't DTR'd your relationship in a way that allows for that? Because obviously, like in a dating relationship,
right,
you have to define it in some capacity so that everyone knows what's good and what's not good.
Yeah.
And there's some objective lines not to cross that we all kind of know. But then people have certain preferences that don't align or that are fine. And so you got to figure that out. Hey, what are you good with schedule wise? What is your expectation of how many dates we go on and how much time we talk throughout the week, right? Those things have to be figured out. Friends never do that, which is wild to me. Like, friends don't say.
It's almost like unspoken. There's like unspoken rules.
Which is why we're all unhappy, because none of us are speaking about them. And we're all like, oh, your version of friendship is like 1 hour a week on the phone. And that's your level of like true engagement. And someone else is like, actually, my level of true engagement would be seeing you every other day, but I only call you once a week because I actually haven't prioritized you. And so you look at the same outcome, and one is true meaningful friendship because that is what one person can give and they're giving it. And the other person has way more to give. They're talking a lot about how they would like to give it and they don't live it out. So like the problem with unspoken friendship is unspoken rules in friendship is there's very few that I think are objective, black and white, and most people buy into. And then there's a lot of nuance. And when our entire networks have opened up because of social, then we're like, it's even worse, and it just accentuates all the problems.
It's such a gray area. And it's interesting that they don't teach this to us as young adults. I mean, I don't think that kids need to know it, but it's more like encouraging people to have those conversations, because even when you start dating, everything is trial and error, and you're trying to figure out the other person.
Right.
And the communication is just, it takes time. That's
what do most people complain about dating? That there's not enough what?
Communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're all about communicating when it comes to romance. We want intentions. We want to know what to expect. We want to know how to interpret your behavior. I want to know, is this something that you're doing because it means a lot to me? Or that's something you do because that's just what you do, because it matters. Like if someone is like, if you meet a guy or a girl who's really, really OCD about the cleanliness of their house, doing the dishes might not be an act of love towards you because they just have to have the dishes done. Versus like if someone's dating me and they wake up in the morning when we're married someday and I'm doing the dishes first thing, that is 100% an act of love.
Yeah.
That is not a natural, I saw the dirty dishes and I needed to clean them. That's me saying, I know you value this and I love you. I value you. And so I'm going to serve you in this way. So like when it comes to relationships like that, we want you to be like, help me interpret this. Help me understand what you're doing here so that I can understand and receive the information the way you want me to. We do not do that in general with friends when we start out. It's very much, just feel it out. I'll just kind of figure it out and I'll kind of read and that'll be interesting. And because to take it seriously in a relationship, a romantic approach, just from like expectations, feels like a lot. And I've always wondered why that is so weird. Like, why is it so weird to treat friends at the same level of like expectations in terms of communication? Or is it weird or am I the weird one?
I don't think that that's weird. I just think, like you're saying, it's uncommon. I don't think a lot of people want to invest that sort of energy, attention, priority, honest, like what I'm thinking, and I don't know, this is my initial thoughts, is it's a societal thing, like a culture thing.
For sure.
Because we are all, like, as Americans, individualistic. We are our own people. We value our independence, our freedom. It's about us. And we don't have that, like, family community. We do, but we don't. Like, we have to build it ourselves. Like, of course we have our families, but where you're living, I mean, a lot of us move away from our families. It's not like other cultures. Like my mom's culture, for example, she's Tongan. It is so heavily family focused, like very similar to like Hispanic, where you grow up in a large household, 10, 12 people, and it's like cousins, uncles, grandma, grandpa, like everybody's under the same roof. Everybody's contributing, everybody's supporting one another. And so you grow up in that environment, and I'm sure that their friendships probably are molded by that. And for us, like in this culture, from what I've seen, we're all independent. And so I've found, like, for me personally, I will put my needs, like, and my goals above prioritizing calling my best friend. And that sucks. Like,
do you like
that's
that about
shitty.
You? Is it necessary for you to achieve your, is it necessary for you to achieve your professional goals?
The timing depends. I think it's contextual. In a season right now, like where I'm prepping for a show, I will say I kind of close that off. Like the friends, the way that I choose to allot my time is very carefully. In my off seasons, there's a lot more flexibility, and I'm a lot more open to, okay, I can have a 2-hour phone call with my best friend and we're just chilling. But I also think as I've grown up, I've had to work at shedding some, like, self-belief issues. So when I was younger, I was very shy, introverted, and my mom used to tell this story to me all the time, and I think I, like, ingrained it in me that this is me. And I've had to work really hard to let go of it. But she used to tell me, like, yeah, friends would come up to you in, like, first grade, give you a big hug, be super excited, and you would just stand there. Like, you would, like, barely hug. Yeah. And it's like, well, as a kid, like, I didn't really like being touched. I liked my personal space. I was quiet, introverted, and I've worked really hard to overcome that. But it took me realizing, like, in college, like, I'm not introverted. I just need time to, like, acclimate to people.
Right.
And once I'm comfortable around you, I'm not introverted at all. And I can bring energy. I can hug strangers. I can hug my friends, you know, like it was something that I had to work really hard at overcoming, but it was pointed out to me, like, by a therapist. I didn't see it myself. Like, I just kept telling myself the same story. It goes back to, like, identity, where I had this identity of, like, oh, well, I'm just, like, a closed off independent person. Right. And that's just not true.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears a little bit. Well, not switch gears, but I want to go back to when you started posting online. So something that's really interesting to me, because I want to learn how to navigate this well. When you started having success in your athletic career, a part of celebrating your journey and celebrating your accomplishments is showcasing how your body has changed. And there's a wardrobe that comes with that, which is, if I'm building muscles, I have to show you my muscles. If I'm celebrating physique, I have to show you my physique. What was the attention? How did you see a shift in the type of attention you were getting and how people approached you when you started really showcasing and celebrating and including more people in this more specific journey that you were taking on?
I did. Yeah. When I was prepping and losing weight, and you could see my muscle definition there and just being shreddy, there's a lot of, like, interest in that. People are very curious about that process. So there was a huge upswing, like very positive upswing of, like, wow, you look incredible. What are you doing? Mostly people just being curious at the beginning. And then now as I've gone through, I've noticed it's like there's two upswings. So there will be like a lot of attention when you're shreddy, and then a lot of attention when you're deep in off season and you're very like soft and curvy. Like when I have more body fat on me,
right?
People love that I post myself looking that way as well. So I get attention both ways, but there's kind of a middle ground where if I'm starting a prep and I'm cutting, or I'm reversing and I'm slowly gaining that weight, it doesn't seem like people are as interested in those phases because it doesn't look as cool.
Right.
But I would say, attention, you see like spikes throughout the different phases.
Do you feel like most of the attention is surrounding your like athletic success, or has there been kind of a beauty culture that's provided maybe other attention that's been hard to navigate?
I would say the sport that I chose, it's definitely, there's like a beauty pageant type vibe. It's hard for me to speak about because I'm still not sure where I stand with that. I do think bikini, so bodybuilding, like bikini, the division itself, there's like a huge emphasis on being feminine. So like I am building a lot of muscle. You have to have muscle and be like jacked to do well, but you also have to be beautiful to see that success. And so there has been, I guess, certain pressures that have been put on me to look a certain way all the time. But I've been very good, I think, like my opinion, about keeping it real with people that like, hey, I don't have to wear makeup, or I don't have to do my hair. I don't have to look a certain way to feel very confident in my body. And I don't have to be shredded to feel confident or feel beautiful. Like I feel beautiful all the time.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very healthy. One of the things that I hear a lot, especially in gym culture when it comes to online, is how gross men are. I mean, I hear about that. That's pretty much what everyone talks about online. And just the comments around when people are posting gym content, which is like, hey, I did glutes today, or I did legs today. And there is a component of, I guess my question would be, what's the right way to celebrate someone's physical success and their journey? What's the proper way of being complimentary or being celebratory in a way that's respectful, but also specific? Like to say, hey, you look great today is not exactly like meaningful to you, maybe necessarily, right? Like that's the nice thing to say. That's what your grandmother says to you at holidays. Like, oh, what a handsome boy, right? Yeah. Like that doesn't, I don't think about that later of like, oh, that's what's going to like feed a little bit of that for me. So there's ways of being complimentary that resonate with people, because you might comment on a specific thing that they're insecure about, and you're like, oh my gosh, you like my eyebrows? Like, I thought they're too big, whatever. So what is the right way, or what is an appropriate way or a good way to be celebratory about someone's physique, but also being respectful and specific?
I think it comes down to the intent behind the comment. And like you mentioned, there's men online who have no filter, or they feel like because it's online, they can say whatever pops into their head. But to me, like an appropriate way is being specific, but also not necessarily objectifying. So if I say like I just hit a glute day or a leg day, and someone were to say your legs look really strong, or like something along those lines, of not necessarily being like, oh wow, like nice fat ass, like that I don't appreciate being, I guess, objectified like sexually,
for sure.
And it just, to me, it comes down to like the delivery and the intent. And because your girlfriends, like if my girls were to be like, oh, you got a fatty, I'd be like, yeah. But if that came from a man, I'd be like, please leave me alone. So there's so much context around it. But at the same time, like a compliment is a compliment. So sometimes I have to just not disconnect myself, but almost switch my mindset of like, this person is trying to give me what they think is a compliment.
It's very generous of you to.
And so I just
assume that.
Like, especially on social media, I really don't let that stuff bother me unless it's just like very crude or blatantly like, okay, you're just objectifying me. Like,
right.
But sometimes if they're like, wow, sexy legs, I'm like, thanks. I know. Like I worked hard to build them. Like I'll like shift it to be like, thanks, I've worked really hard on them or something. Like, but it took time, but I really don't let that stuff like affect me.
Yeah.
Negatively. Sometimes it just makes me laugh. I'm like, oh, buddy.
Oh man. Yeah, for sure. No, that really is good to know, and I can't even imagine what that's like. And so that's just always something that's curious to me of, you know, I'm someone who I want to be intentional and I want to be specific and I want to communicate on purpose. And we all want to be beautiful to the world in some way.
I think everybody is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so how do you find ways of communicating those extra things? Because it's really easy and safe to say you're really kind and you're really patient, and because there's no objectification attached to that potentially. But most people's insecurities lie in the appearance. You know, a lot of people at least have those insecurities. And so there's ways of building people up and helping celebrate them that can be really meaningful. But how do you not flirt doing it? How do you not come across with an intention that you don't have?
Right.
And when someone's like their career and their goal is to build a beautiful body, whatever that version is for them, you know, what's the right, especially as a man, like what's the right, is there even a safe way of doing it? Or is it just like, you should just say, you know, that looks great, you're doing a really amazing job, and leave it generic because it's there's too much of an unknown as to how someone else might interpret based on their preconceptions of what they think about most men online, right? Like, so right. I was talking to a friend of mine, and your friend as well, and I was like, is there any good way for a man to compliment you physically without like accidentally coming across as being kind of gross or objectifying? And she's like, probably not really. Like, unless I have a personal relationship with you, there's just no good way. Like, especially to talk about like my butt. Like, there's just no good way to do that. Which, like, obviously, yes, that makes a lot more sense. But that's just something that's really interesting to me of, are you just not complimentary? Because we now have moved so far in the gross DM culture of men that like the expectation is if a guy is complimenting you, he has a specific agenda or he is totally uninterested.
Man.
So like, that's just a really interesting thing that I've been trying to figure out.
Right. How
to navigate, because I hope that I'm not in the category of weird, gross Instagram guys. But I also think people are beautiful, and I think people are attractive, and they should be celebrated in the right way. And I know a lot of the compliments that I hold on to are ones that came from people I didn't have close relationships with.
Right.
Because they have no reason to say it other than it might be true. So that I'm really good at explaining away compliments.
Were they like complimenting your physical traits though? Or was it like character or personality?
No, it's physical traits.
Physical traits, okay.
And it happens, women don't tend to compliment men's physical traits because they've seen what that means. Often what
men are like, oh, she wants
right, exactly.
me.
So women don't really tend to take the initiative in compliments.
Interesting.
For a fair, I understand why, but it is hard because it's like, dang, I've been in a relationship with someone where 6 months down the road, they're like, oh, when I first saw you, I thought all these things. I was like, you could have said something, right? So there's some
level. It's a catch-22. Like,
right.
You're not, women don't compliment men really on physical traits unless we have some sort of like pre-existing relationship. And then men, if you compliment us on our physical traits, we're like immediately just write them off. But at the same time, you pick outfits on purpose.
That's interesting. You dress on purpose. We all dress on purpose to look a certain way. And my guess is we're not only trying to be attractive to our platonic friends. We want to be attractive to the world.
Yes.
So that's to me, that's something that's like, okay. So if you looked in the mirror and said, I look good or I didn't look good, you made a choice based on some sort of, in your opinion, objectively good visual image. So what would it mean? How would you be successful in your appearance? If you were to go out in the world, dressed a certain way, you presented yourself in a certain way, what would a successful attempt at that be where the friends that you are just platonic with celebrated you, the people that you would like to attract were attracted to you and you knew that, and no one disrespected you? Like, is there even a perfect scenario in which all that happens? Or do we kind of say, well, in order to attract the one I want, I know I'm going to end up getting 10 gross compliments that I don't want? Or is there a way to do it where you could have everything you want?
Gosh, I think in a perfect world, I would want to say there's a way to pull that off, but I don't think that there is.
Right.
Because we don't live in a perfect world. And I agree to a point that we can dress a certain way to like portray ourselves to the world, but I mostly think it's energy, because I could be wearing the most expensive clothes I own and not feel good in my own skin. And so the energy there, like I might look objectively hot or one way, but I might not feel hot.
For sure.
And so then I don't feel like I would get compliments, or like people would be able to feel that energy, even if like consciously they don't register it. But like for me, I dress according to what makes me feel good and comfortable. And like when I feel good and comfortable, then other people, like I just notice like other people will be like, oh, that's a great color on you, or a nice shirt or whatever. Right. So in a perfect world, I wish that there was a way we could figure that out. But it's like if I wear a certain outfit because I'm looking for a certain response, I like can't go to the gas station because I will get comments, you know?
Yeah.
It's like.
For sure. It's right. And I definitely don't think that I have like an answer to any of it. These are just some of the things that I think about, because
like, what do you think though, in terms of the question that you asked me, like, is there a way to accomplish like your friends complimenting you, building you up, your crush being attracted to you, but then not getting the unwanted attention?
I don't think there is a way
you don't think
to do that. And I think it is a little different for men and women, because in my experience, women have such very different preferences. So there is one man who is a 9 to one person, and he's a 3 to the other person. And it's just like, because it's not my vibe. It's not my preference. Right. In my experience, if you're a beautiful girl to one man, you're a beautiful girl to 90% of men. In some way, not know, people have preferences, blondes, brunettes, whatever. Like, but you're not uninteresting just because you're not my type when it comes to men, right? Like, there's just seems to be more of a one size fits all component, for lack of a better term. Obviously, that's not the case. But no, to answer the question, I don't think that you are going to get what you want and none of what you want. Like. Mm-hmm. When we choose to do something, we take the consequences of all of what that action might bring. And so you have to decide before you make a choice, what am I willing to put myself through? And what am I willing to sacrifice? What am I, and that might mean I really want a man or a woman who values my character and who values my heart. And so I'm going to make sure that I don't present myself in a way that attracts more of that objectification or sexualization. But I might miss out on attracting someone who would still love me for my heart, but who would also be attracted to me. Mm-hmm. Because I'm going to guarantee that I only am approached by people who spend enough time with me to get to know me and fall for who I am. And then hopefully they're also attracted to me. But that's what I'm going to do. And so to me, it's more about having the discernment before you make choices to say, this is what I want ultimately. And so even though I know I'm going to sacrifice probably some fun conversations with cute men who come up to talk to me or cute women who come up to talk to me, it's more important that I find the thing I'm looking for than not. And then on the flip side, I do think people want attention. And so I do think people dress or present themselves in a certain way for a certain type of attention. And when they get the right attention, yay, that's a win. Yeah. It worked. When they get the wrong attention, their response is, oh, people are gross. I'm allowed to do whatever I want. And I'm being treated unfairly. Because I see a lot of people post funny memes where they're like, oh, posted a thirst trap and only like Weird Joe 9700 messaged me and no one else did. Like my crush didn't. And it's like, I get that's funny, but there's probably some truth in that. Yes. Like I did want to present myself in a certain way to try to get this person's attention. And I threw out my net and I caught all the wrong fish. Mm-hmm. And then in order to not have to admit that they were seeking attention, they have to redefine the situation to be like, oh, these fish are so gross. I should be able to do whatever I want to do. Which is like, yeah, you should be able to do that.
Why do people redefine that though?
Because
do you know what I'm like?
I think it's because they have this projection of like someone looking for attention is inherently bad.
But what? And so why? And you know,
right, right, exactly. It's like if you just take ownership of what you were trying to do, there's no lesser value to that. Yeah, you have projected a lower value on this thing, and then you did that thing, and then you're like, oh no, I did what I have considered to be a low value decision.
Like you pass a judgment on yourself.
Yeah. And so in order to avoid doing that, you have to shift the judgment to someone else so that you aren't accountable for the thing that wasn't even a problem. And that to me is really...
And there's that string of accountability again.
Right, exactly. So it all comes back to that. But yeah, I think it's, it's just really interesting. And the more I've gotten involved in working with creatively gym folks and in that world, I'm just more I'm learning more and more about how to navigate, correctly.
Like as a person who works in that space and you want to compliment.
And I want to celebrate and also like having an artistic lens. I know, you mentioned to me, like one of the things you asked me was what draws me to people?
Yeah. How do you choose your subjects or who you're interested in working with?
And the answer is there's so many answers to that question. Because not only is that most people, when they ask that, they're asking about the aesthetics, like what visually are you drawn to? But to me, there's equally as important emotional and relational reasons, like the way someone presents themselves or the story that they have to tell. I want to work with them for that reason. Or I have a personal relationship with you, and so I want to create together because that's way more fulfilling for me to be able to give someone I care about something that they're excited about than just someone I've just met.
Right.
But specifically aesthetics, once again, it comes back down to preference in the way that everyone has a type. Everyone has a preference for what they like. What draws me in is anything that's striking to me, that I just am like, wow, that's really unique. That's really beautiful. Mm-hmm. And it can be a lot of different things. It can be someone's eye color, hair color, or just the shape of their face or the way they hold themselves. Like the way someone presents themselves physically matters. And we don't think about it because most people don't think about their posture, don't think about how they're holding themselves, but it reads in the room and it's a huge part of nonverbal communication. And I notice things like that. And the thing that's really interesting is the more I've done photography, the more I've kind of learned about the craft, the more I've developed kind of this secondary lens for what I think looks beautiful, what I think looks really good. which is really interesting because it's not always aligned with my like personal preference. Like there's Dave out in the world. He likes what he likes. He thinks certain people are good looking for certain reasons, and that's his just personal preference. But then there's also like, as a photographer, I've developed this artistic view where I can look at someone and be like, that's just beautiful. Like maybe not my personal preference or not the person that I would choose to, ask out on a date for whatever reason, but like I can still appreciate the visual as something really beautiful and want to capture it. And I think this is true for any artist, but just when you're doing your craft, it just is satisfying. So it might feel weird. It might seem weird to be like, oh, you just want to take a picture? Like, that's weird. It's like, yeah, but
there's so much.
For me, there's all the components of it I really enjoy and value. And it's just really satisfying to capture images in a way that I think are really beautiful and are really artistic and stylized. And so there's all that weird nerdy stuff that I'm into. And so then it comes down to, well, how do you approach potential subjects in a way that is, going back to what we were talking about before, specific without coming across as having the wrong agenda.
Right.
Because as a younger man in the photography field, there's already a lot of potential stereotypes as to why I'm a photographer.
Right.
Because there are a lot of photographers who don't do it correctly, who have wrong intentions, who try to manipulate a photo shoot to meet their personal desires, which is despicable, and it's horrible, and it's way too common. And I want to make sure that anytime I'm working with anyone creatively, I'm doing everything I can to create a safe, comfortable, open process where someone feels not only safe, but respected, celebrated, comfortable, and that their experience is good. But when it comes to approaching people or having an idea or saying, hey, you have this thing about you that's really captivating, in the DM world where men slide into girls' DMs, it's almost impossible to be like, hey, I'm a photographer. I think you look amazing. Can I take your photo? Without also unintentionally saying, hey, I think you're super beautiful and I want to spend time with you. And I'm using photography
as an excuse,
as a guise for my own personal agenda. And so I think that's actually a question that I have for you, which is there a way to have someone approach you that you don't know or have a personal relationship with prior, to approach you with an artistic intention or motivation where they are above reproach and respectful and professional, but also specific? Going back to like, if someone's just like, hey, you got a great vibe, can I take your photo? It's like, well, why me? Right. Like the more general you make something, the more room you leave for someone else to assume about the specifics. So in some ways it's like, I think you should be specific about why you're reaching out to someone. But then the more specific you get, the more potential there is for someone to read into that as like, oh, you think I have a really nice body and you're into me in that way. And so you're using your art as a way of connecting to then potentially move into something else.
Right.
And so is there a way that someone could reach out to you as someone who is the ideal model for practically everything?
Thank you.
Like,
that's very kind.
Well, it's just like the aesthetic, everything about you is like, yes, for any creative project. But is there a way for someone to reach out to you in a way that would be, that you would feel like they're professional about it, that they have unassuming motives, but that also you feel like they want to work with you for a reason and that you would be open to doing that? Or are you just going to assume that if it's a man reaching out to you on social, there's probably maybe a hint of personal interest?
It depends, but I have had, actually very recently, I had a photographer slide into my DMs and I went and checked out his profile and kind of vetted him. Like I looked at who he's been shooting. I looked if we had any mutuals, if he had worked with anyone that I knew. And so I did kind of like a background process, checked out his website, looked up like reviews, testimonies. And then I was like, okay, let me just chat with him and see what the vibe is, because I am very big on energies. I know I keep saying that, but I can feel when somebody's intention is good and is truly they're just interested in shooting with me, versus just the way that they might speak to me. If I start to get a vibe of, I think that this is not what I want.
Right.
But maybe that makes me naive, but I'm willing to give people, men, photographers, an opportunity. I will chat with them. I will do like the background necessary work of, and that's why social media is great in some ways, because you can do that. And I can reach out to people that they've worked with and say, hey, I saw that you've worked with X, Y, and Z. What was it like? What was he like? Tell me, if you're comfortable. And normally women, women love to help each other, and they're like, yes, go for it. Or they're like, he was okay. He tried to touch me a little bit during the shoot. And it's like, okay, cool. Thank you. Like,
right.
So there is that process that I will go through. If there are no mutuals, if I really can't get a sense, I'll try to do a phone call, or I'll try to do something where I can get a better vibe before I commit to anything.
Right. So
I don't know if that answers your question, but if there's somebody that is captivating, is interesting, a good way to slide in to me would be specific enough to communicate that, but not too specific that it's creepy. So like if it was like, hey, I really love your curly hair. It's so long and big and fluffy, and I would love to shoot it. That might be a little too much. Where if it was like, your hair's really beautiful, I think I could shoot you in a way that highlights that. Would you be interested? Like, there's just differences in the communication, in the way that you're presenting it.
Right. Right. So what I'm hearing is it's all conditional. It all depends.
It's very conditional. And
yeah.
Well, I don't know if everyone would be as accepting as I am. Some women they're not as open. And I think that comes with like the territory of being an influencer, because you don't really know.
Right.
7,000 is a lot of people. It is a lot. It's not 100,000.
Right.
And while that would be great, I'm actually pretty happy with the community that I have, the following that I have. My engagement is great. I love what I've built.
Yep.
But there might be a day where I do reach high numbers, like astronomical numbers, which just would be crazy. And I might have to be more careful about how accepting I am of these DMs. But I think that might be like a time and place, trial and error type thing.
So why I didn't ask you to shoot, because I actually rarely, if ever, cold call people that I don't know to shoot with them, for that exact reason of when it comes to photography, it is such a vulnerable art form. No matter what the wardrobe is, no matter what you're wearing, there is a level of I'm being captured. I'm exposing myself in some capacity, in some way, and it's not a net zero of vulnerability. It is
very vulnerable,
right? And the last thing that I would ever want is for someone to have any doubt about my intentions when it came to working with me. It's kind of like when your friend finally reveals their feelings for you and you just have no interest. It's like, as soon as you say no, even though they're like, yeah, we can still be friends, there's just that little bit of, but I know how you feel, and I now want to navigate a little bit differently. And there's just kind of that feeling that I want to avoid whenever I'm working with someone, where when I'm saying, hey, pose this way, hey, let's try this outfit, let's try this scenario, that there's never a like, are you doing that because you're trying, like, why? Like, what is it that you're trying to do?
Right.
I going back to like, what am I willing to sacrifice to make sure that I have what I want?
Mm-hmm.
I never want to risk that. I never want to risk putting someone in a situation or approaching someone in a way where they're like, I'm not sure. So I just, that's why I don't do it very often, if ever. But I asked you to come do podcasts.
Yes.
Why did you say yes?
I thought it'd be cool. I saw that we had some rapport already. Like we had connected in the DMs already, I think through like Bree, and I know her very well and I trust her judgment. So it was, again, one of those things where I was like, well, he's in my like locus of people that I know. You're like you're in the outer rings of the circle. So I was willing to discuss it, and I liked the vibe. Like the energy was good. I honestly, I appreciated the ask. Like I thought, wow, that's cool. It made me feel special, I guess. Like I was like, I have something to share. So why not?
Cool, I passed the vibe check.
Yeah. Passed the vibe check.
So in general, when you look at when someone connects with you or follows you or sends you a message and you go to their social profile, what are you looking for? What are you looking at?
I'm trying to figure out who they are, what they're about. You can generally go through their highlights. What they've highlighted speaks a lot because that's what's important to them. Mm-hmm. What they've pinned at the top of their profile, that's also important. You can see what's priority to them there. And just I'll go through captions, like how they write, what they're writing. If they're just constantly posting one thing over and over, I look for like patterns. I'm trying to decipher depending on what the DM is. So if you had asked to shoot, I would have gone through your previous work and looked like, is his style of shooting something I'm interested in? But because it was podcast, I love podcasting. I think everybody has something to say.
Right.
And so I just thought it would be interesting to have a conversation.
Gotcha. What did you glean about who you think I am from my profile?
Pretty much everything that you've said here is aligned with what's on your profile. So I went through like testimonies. I went through your Q&A of red flags with photographers, and it showed me that you're very caring towards the people that you work with. You're specific about it. You're intentional, and you're not doing it for clout or fame or any sort of motive that might lead to some questionable things. Like I felt like you were somebody who had integrity and somebody that I could potentially trust.
Well,
is what
you.
I got.
I'm really, that means a lot. Transparency is huge for me. I think authenticity is the most universal language. And it's the thing people pick up on the most. I think it goes back to energy. Like you just know whether or not you're getting the real vibe from people or not. And so I'm really glad. I really use my Instagram as a portfolio piece, really. I made a decision early on in my career. I wasn't going to try to build photography to be a full-time business. I never wanted to compromise on the art of it to pay the bills. I wanted to make sure that I was engaged and excited about all the projects I was working on. I didn't want to have to kind of say, I guess I'll do this because I need the money.
Right.
And I didn't want to hustle it. I wanted to have control of who I work with and what we do and why we do it. I wanted to have the freedom to say no and to be able to say, hey, I'm actually not interested in doing that, or the way that you've kind of conducted yourself over the last 3 months trying to set this up has made me not trust you as a professional. You haven't responded timely. You've pushed back things without clear communication. And it doesn't matter what you look like or how great it would be to add photos of you to my portfolio. I don't want to continue this sort of relationship because it matters more to me that the collaboration and the emotional response and the experience is positive for everyone than just getting great photos. And so I really appreciate you saying that. And that really means a lot. And that's something that I care about being, you know, when, you know, you think about like core values, if people aren't echoing back your core values to you, then you are doing something wrong.
Yeah.
If you say that these things matter to you and no one in your life is talking about how you live those things out, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like that means they're not your core values. It means it's what you want people to think of you as, but it's not who you like really are. And so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Did you have any questions that you wanted to, I know we kind of went back and forth and like things we wanted to talk about. Was there anything else that you wanted to hit on that you were interested in?
Yeah. I wanted to know how you define success.
What a question. For me, success is contentment. Being able to have the things that I know matter the most to me, and having those things cultivated well, is what matters the most to me. Stability, the ability to know that I'm going to have shelter and have food, have the ability to spend time with people I love. That's what success is to me. And so I measure everything else based on how well I'm able to do those things. I'm never going to go to bed at night and be filled by professional success in terms of achievement and status if those things don't translate to loving my people well and serving them and being the type of person that I want to be. Success for me is more about becoming who I want to become than getting what I want to have. Because who I am matters to everyone else. What I have doesn't. And so I want to be someone who is compassionate and caring and who is a servant to those around him, who gives more than he takes, who puts their needs and their experiences above my own, because that's to me where joy really is found, is in the service of others. And so success means becoming that person. It's that identity. It's that lifestyle. And so if I have to take a job I don't love, but it provides me flexibility and financial freedom to start building for a family someday. Like I want to do that now. Like I'm going to be preparing for my identity as a husband and hopefully a father someday now, because I should be doing that. I can love the person that I'm going to be with someday now by how I live now. And so success for me is doing those things. It's finding contentment and joy in the outcome of my decisions. So it doesn't mean making the most money for the sake of making the most money. It doesn't mean building up my portfolio so that I'm traveling the world and getting to shoot with these famous people. Like that will not provide me joy when I'm sitting in a bed at 80 years old, right? Like I'm not going to be thinking about, remember all these times? I'm going to be looking at
the people who are there.
Right. Did I love my wife well? Did I raise children that are well-adjusted and awesome and are raising their children well and who are kind, compassionate, and good people? Like I'm going to have a lot of joy knowing I did that. I'm not going to have any joy that comes from like the frivolous, selfish desires that I might have now. Because like I want to go do cool things and make good money and have people think I'm awesome.
Of course.
But that won't matter. And so for me, success, that's where success is can I be content with what I have and know that I'm loving those around me well, and everything else is fleeting. And as deeply philosophical as that feels, it is the most practical way I've ever chosen to live my life. And it really does change the way that I experience the roller coaster of life's like successes and failures from a, professional standpoint.
Yeah. I think that's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. It is not something that I see a lot of people my age talking about, which makes.
How old are you?
I'm 26.
Huh.
And and I don't mean to say that I'm like, oh, I'm super like.
No, I don't think it comes off
emotionally
that way.
mature and I'm wise beyond my years.
It's just a lot of people our age get caught up in the hustle.
Right. And I get accused all the time of being too serious and taking life too seriously and being too deep. And it's one of the reasons why I have to have a podcast, because it's like I can set myself up for deep conversations and no one judges me. But no, it's just like when people say like, well I'm going to go do this. And I say, I'm not going to do that. They're like, why not? I was like, do you want to know the real answer? Because the real answer is not, I just don't want to. The real answer is I want to, but I want other things more.
There are other things that I'm prioritizing.
Right. And so while you will go out and you will spend money on drinks in Starbucks and all the things and dinners, like that's okay. That's fine. Mm-hmm. I'm saving that for diapers, right? Like for rent for a house, right? Like like even though that's not like my conscious thought,
it's not here right in front of you, but it is something that you are striving
and
for.
The people that mean the most to me, that will mean the most too.
Yes.
Like someday when I go on my 4th or 5th date with whoever's going to be my wife someday, and I tell her, yeah, I've actually been saving for my family. Whew, that's going to be some excellent sweet talk.
Yes.
But it will be then.
Bonus points.
Right. It won't be, it's not like I'm not going to walk into the bar and be like, oh, that guy's saving for marriage. Right. Like, yeah, that's not the draw, but I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay sacrificing the hyper masculine status image of spending money on having nice things all the time.
How did you decide to live your life that way? Like, how did you decide that I'm going to put aside everything that's right in front of me and not live day to day in the wind, and I'm instead going to live my life unconventionally? So
for me, the fundamental answer is my faith. Like my spiritual faith is what guides everything that I do, and what I believe in. More practically, my family. Like I watched my dad love my mom really well, and not just the things he got her, the nice things he said to her, but the way he supported her, the way that he made plans for me as a child when he was looking at me when I was 6 years old being like, can we go to Wendy's? And it's like, no, we're going to eat peanut butter and jelly at home, but then we're going to have a really amazing vacation to Disney because I'm setting aside money for memories and time together and all those things. So watching that and seeing how I turned out, like, you know, I'm insecure about a lot of things. There's a lot of things about me that I don't like. Most of them,
you wouldn't know that. I wouldn't assume that. Most
of them have to do with stupid appearance, just surface level things, talent. I'm not 6 foot. I'm not, 220. I'm not ripped. I'm not the things that culture has told me like will draw the initial attention of women or of the world.
Okay.
My insecurities are not in my character. I mean, I wish I was more patient. I wish I was less selfish. I wish I wasn't a lot of things that I am. But like my insecurities are not in who I am as a person. I know who I want to be. I know how to treat people well. I know how to love people well. I know how to listen. Those are things that, not because I got really good at them because I'm amazing, but because those were fundamental values for my entire life growing up. And so I have learned how to do those things well.
Right.
They don't translate super well in terms of like general popularity in the world because people don't value that until you're already like 3 levels deep into a relationship with them.
I don't know if people have it modeled for them either.
I'm sure,
unfortunately,
they don't. Right? Because
that's amazing. Like that family, your family sounds like they raised you.
Yeah, they're the best
in such an ideal way. Like that's the dream, right? Sure. And we all want to raise families in that way, but then somehow things go astray. Things happen, and I think that level of self-awareness of knowing like I was raised this way and I'm going to take what I learned and saw and apply that to my life and really live according to my values.
Yeah.
That is so huge.
Well, I think too, you try it once and you realize it's better. Like delayed gratification is just better.
Yes.
And you know that better than anybody as a bodybuilder, as someone,
I was going to say that's like bodybuilding in a nutshell.
Right. It's like, I'm not going to do the thing I want to do now because the thing I want later, I want so much more.
Yep.
And as weird as it makes me to be talking about marriage and family as a 26-year-old dude all the time, like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being the like weird, overly emotional and sensitive guy now because I really want my wife to trust me with her children someday. Like, I really want my wife's family to look at me and say, that's a man that we like trust
that's
with our daughter.
Man. Yeah.
And to lead a family and to guard her heart and to do all the things that people actually care about. Because like anybody that I know now, when they have a child someday, they're going to be like, this is the only thing in my life that matters. Like, protecting the people I love matters more than anything. It's just until we have them, we don't think about them. Yeah. And so I don't have those people yet. I'm not married. I'm not even dating anybody. Like, I'm just living my life. I just want to live it on purpose for who I hope to be someday. I may never get married. I may never have kids. Like, that might never happen. But I know now I'm still living a better life and I'm who I want to be more than who I would be if I was just chasing the like desires of my heart in any given moment. And I still do that. Like, I'm splurging on expensive equipment and going on trips and I'm still indulging.
Well, we're human.
Right.
You know?
Like, I'm not, I would never claim to be perfect at it, and I'm much better at talking about it than I am about living it out. But I have to keep talking about it to hold myself accountable to keep living it out.
The intention is there.
The more I tell people, hey, I'm saving for this, I'm trying to do this, the more I have to then live out.
Up to
because if I want to be someone who's congruent with what I say, I have to live it out. So I have to keep talking about it. So it's kind of projecting that. But yeah, it is really his family. And then I tried it. I took a step of faith to say, I'm going to try to, without my parents making me, discipline myself. I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to try to do more of this. And then I saw, oh, nice. Like, I have these things. I have this freedom. I have this flexibility. And I have the stability to offer someone else, not just financially, emotionally. Like, I'm grounded enough to be able to engage in your problems and your heartbreak and your brokenness and say, hey, how do we do this together? Versus being like, I've chased my own desires for so long and been broken and bruised and beat up by people. I have no room to like allow someone else in. And I hear that all the time. I'm still figuring out who I am. I'm still doing these things, which people should do. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it makes it very hard to build an equitable relationship when you're finding yourself, when you're still working on yourself. You're never going to be perfect. And so you're going to spend your whole relationship or marriage like getting better. Like, you're not done.
Right. The
like,
work never ends.
If you're good enough, then like, what does that mean about who you should become? And so you always like, you got to keep going. But there is a level of like, hey, I'm ready to team up with someone. And it doesn't have to be romantic. It can be in any sense, but like, I'm ready to take on this creative project. I'm ready to take on this thing because I know who I am, what I can do, what I can't do. And I'm also able to communicate it. And that, I think, is more missing is people's ability to articulate their own self-awareness because they haven't spent any time learning. And also men have done even less work on the emotional articulation. Because,
unfortunately,
I mean, there's a biological component, like our brains are just not done until we're 26. Like, I'm like this year, I'm like, I'm done. But also they're just not trained. Like, it's not sexy to be emotionally articulate at the beginning. It is later. It's a, you know, people eventually come to appreciate it. But like, if you're not also attractive and successful and good looking and have the things that be the type, you're not going to win someone over with your emotional depth and wild articulation of thought and kindness and compassion. Like, you need to have both, and chemistry matters for sure. So it's, men aren't exactly like learning like, oh, if I was just more articulate and more emotionally in touch, more women would like me. But also the problem is that's a lot of the advice that women give men is you should just be more of this. It's like, is that what's working though?
Right.
Anyway, so those are all my thoughts on all of that.
That I love that. That has it's refreshing. I'm sure that you probably hear that often. Maybe not. I don't
get to have these conversations very often. Because people don't. I don't want to be overly critical of the general people. It is not common for someone to have the emotional space to dive into something like this.
Yep. I think that it is refreshing to hear such clear and you know who you are and what you want. You have the vision and you have the drive to make that happen. And the journey along the way, of course, you're going to learn and change and grow, but to what you're speaking to, like that foundation of stability and emotional depth it's a very valuable thing to have and to cultivate and to strive for.
Yeah, it's not fun. I mean, it's rarely fun because it's a lot of saying no. It's a lot of dying to yourself today.
It's a lot of sacrifice.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find people who are not only understanding, but empathetic, because most times it's just like, oh, you're a party pooper because you're going out, but you're not drinking as much as we are. Or, oh, you aren't willing to do this. And I know you know all about that. Of like when you go to places like here's my food. I have to eat this out of my plastic tub. Like I can't eat and drink what y'all are doing. And it does take a toll on relationships. And I have fewer than I probably would want ideally. But the depth and meaning of those ones that are still around is a lot higher. I mean, a lot more meaningful. And yeah, it's just kind of, it's a sacrifice for sure.
It comes down to quality of the relationships. Right. The quality of my relationships improved the more that I sacrificed, because the ones that stuck around, they understood.
Right. Well, right. It's like, do you want 90% of the world to like a version of you that you think they want? Or do you want 10% of the world to love the person that you are? Because you're not going to get both. Like, you're just not, everyone's not going to love you. So it's a lot less work to just be yourself.
It is.
You just have to be okay with the initial kind of decline of the surface level relationships that you thought were meaningful until you realized that people had these other agendas, and when you weren't able to provide them what they wanted, they're out.
Yeah.
And that's hard, and it sucks, but there's a deep level of peace to know you're not friends with me because what I can do for you. You're friends with me because of who I am to you.
Right.
That's very different, but rare.
It is. Incredibly.
Well, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, questions that you had, or thoughts that you were intriguing to you? I mean, I have plenty of time, so there's no rush. We're not like on a time crunch, but
I don't know. I think we covered a lot. I'm pretty happy with what we got to talk about. I think maybe touching on the question that you posed to me about what's missing from social media.
Yeah. What is missing from social media?
I think that would be a good way to like wrap this all together, because my thoughts there were generally that we're missing authenticity. And that's what we've just spent most of the time talking about is being yourself, being genuine, being authentic. I think a large component of that is missing from social media, from the fitness culture. Everybody wants to project this image onto social media of who they are, what they do. Like, look at my body. It looks so great. But then behind the scenes, they're doing something completely different.
Right.
And I just think it's important to reiterate to people that what you see online isn't always what is actually happening and what's going on. And I think you and I are kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum, where we are trying really hard to bring that genuine self onto social media and bring that authenticity every time. So whenever I go on social media and post, it is from a place of how can this help somebody?
Right. Instead
of how can I make people think that I'm doing X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, I totally agree. What's hard for me is the comparison, obviously, because the intellectual knowledge that what people are posting is not a full picture, isn't exactly enough to stop you from feeling jealous, from feeling insecure, from feeling less than. And so it's just hard because it's like, I know that your life's not perfect, but yet, dang girl, like you got it all together. Like you have the person. And it's like, even if I tell myself that y'all are fighting at times and you also have problems in your relationship, like I'm still looking at how happy you are in these photos and wanting that, or, oh, you have this physique that I would love to have. And maybe you took some shortcuts, or maybe you have some serious other health issues that have come along with the decisions you've made, or you are very lonely because you are spending all your time sacrificing everything to have this thing. And so you're sitting at home miserable, and I'm thinking that you're getting all the attention and all the success from this thing you've achieved. Right. And it's like, no matter what I tell myself or what I know to be true, it doesn't really do a good job of like mitigating the insecurity or mitigating the frustration or the comparison. And so really, to me, I think the antidote is for us to be more authentic. It's like, instead of just being like, oh no, just remember it's a highlight reel. Remember it's a highlight reel. Remember that it's not real. There's dirt under the surface. That it's like, I don't want to be focusing on like, I don't want to be telling myself that your life's worse to make myself feel better.
Right.
Like that's not a healthy space to be in.
Yeah.
I want you to be vulnerable with me about who you are. And then I actually have the emotional availability to celebrate with you in your success. Like friends are friends you can tell good news to, and friends are friends you can tell bad news to, right? Where it's like, when I tell you good news, you celebrate with me. And when I tell you bad news, you don't tell me about how much worse you have it, but you sit and you mourn with me for my time. Like that's what a real friend does. But when I'm just jealous about your success and I'm joyful in your failures, that's not good for me.
Yeah.
Like you're unaffected by it because you're just posting.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here being like, oh yay, you broke up. Thank God. It's like, that's horrible.
Right.
I want to have relationships where I'm able to know you well enough to where I celebrate with you and your successes. I'm still going to probably feel jealous at times because that's a human reality, but I'm genuinely happy for you. Or, you know, when you're broken, I'm broken with you and I'm there to be there. I don't know how to tell people that, because to tell someone that there's an authenticity piece missing to them is like hard. An identity attack. And that goes back to like, what is the right way of having a conversation with someone to say, hey, you really are working so hard to have this image that you make real life decisions about how to spend your time and money to appear a certain way. And I'm watching you burn out at home by yourself, sad, lonely. I want to help you and love you, but you also will feel very disrespected if I were to comment that you were maybe pursuing vanity or something else like that. I guess a better question would be, how would you want to be approached if someone was like, I feel like you're spending all your time on social and you're not like available for like being a real human?
Me personally, I would just prefer that they say just that, because although there might be a gut punch feeling and maybe like a defensive, like, what do you mean? Deep down, if that were the case, I would know it.
Right.
And I think most people do. And sometimes they do need to be called out. I appreciate being called out. I like if somebody were to come to me and be like, hey, dude, you're making a lot of decisions lately that I don't think align with who you are. I'd be like, shit, thanks for telling me. Like, let's get into it. Tell me more. but that is something that I've honed over time. And I don't know if everyone has that. What's the word?
Humility.
Like humility?
Yeah. I mean, it feels arrogant to say how humble I am, but it is real.
It is, yeah.
Do you think people's level of outrage and defensiveness when someone says that is correlated with how much they know it's true?
Oof. Probably.
Isn't that kind of scary?
I think the bigger the emotional outburst, the more...
The deeper you've hit.
Yeah, the deeper the trigger, that you've really touched something in them that they know, and they just aren't willing to face it yet.
Well, right, because if someone said something, to me that really, I was like, what? I'd be like, please help me understand. Like, I'm really interested in knowing. I had a friend tell me once, she was like, Dave, I'm just not used to like having such a high maintenance friend. And I was like, can you please tell me more about what you mean? Because I've never considered myself high maintenance friend.
Right.
It's definitely not a compliment in my opinion, but like what I know that to mean, I was like, please, like I was not even immediately offended. I was like, I would really love to know.
Give me more? Yeah.
And as she explained, she was like, yeah, you just like, you expect people to behave a certain way and do certain things. And I was like, do you mean like I expect people to mean what they say and behave in accordance with the words they say?
Right.
Because if that's your definition of high maintenance, 100%, I am high maintenance friend.
I would identify, yeah.
But that to me is just expecting human adults to be responsible, kind people.
Yeah.
And so once I had that conversation, I was like, oh, okay. Learning a little bit more. And I now no longer feel like insulted potentially because I've kind of figured it out. And I asked other people, I was like, hey, you know me. Would you consider me high maintenance? They were like, no. Like, LOL, no, for sure not. And that was helpful for me too.
Just to make sure,
right.
Yeah.
But when I was in college, I was very into like image and looking good and all these things. And a friend of mine was like, you just really seem like you care about the clothes you wear and the way you present yourself. And I was like, no, I don't. I don't care about that at all. Like, I'm perfectly fine. Like, and that was like, of course I cared about that. And then I went on like 4 years. I mean, to this day, it's like t-shirts and jeans. Like, I'm not going to let myself get caught up in that. I'm not going to buy the fancy car. I'm not going to do the things because I know where that can lead for me. But yeah, I think it was how true it was for me that was directly related to how defensive I got. Now, I don't want to generalize. So obviously some people are just defensive and sometimes I don't have the context of their life. And so when I say something, I might be the fourth person to tell them that and they're fed up with it. And it really is not true. But we can't just assume that everyone's the exception. We can't just assume that everything is like the out of context situation that we have to make room for. And you can't live your life assuming that you have to live your life with like normal, like the common thing. And you can't make decisions based off of the exceptions. You have to make decisions based off of what's the most probable.
Yep.
And so when people are being a certain way, you have to say, this is probably what's happening. Can we talk more about it? But yeah, I wish social media was more authentic. And I wish more people posted. That's the interesting thing, is that I wish more people contributed genuinely. Because a lot of people just consume, just swipe, send their DMs to people, send funny memes and things. And I'm like, if you just like posted, like when people post stories talking to the camera, I'm like, thank God. Like you might feel like I'm trying to be an influencer, but like, no, I like hearing from you. Like, I want to hear from you. And I think that's a sentiment that a lot of people feel, but we're all in the like, oh, if I try too hard on social, now I'm trying to be famous.
Yeah. I don't get that. What is that? Like,
I don't know.
Trying too hard.
I definitely felt that way for a while. I was like, oh, if I start posting things, and it's going to seem like I'm trying too hard and all I care about is the likes. And then I realized, oh no, if I want to treat this like any other relationship, I have to reciprocate and engage, and I cannot just consume. I have to provide. And I wish more people did that, because then my feed wouldn't just be the viral famous things and then the people who are all about, that. So I think that's also interesting. The antidote would actually be for people to post more about their actual life and have more of an authentic communication. But
yeah, I agree. I like it too.
Do you run into people who just follow you on social? Like, have you ever had, not a fan experience, but like, have you met people who are like, oh my God, I follow you. You go to Factory. I know you do this. Like, have you had those experiences?
Yeah. What's interesting though, that I'm trying to change is I'll get a message later. Hey, I saw you at Factory today, from somebody on social media that maybe I don't follow or I don't know them.
Right.
And I'm just like, come say hi. You know, yeah. There's nothing wrong with messaging me later, but I would love to meet people in person in real life and have a conversation and just get to know you. And if I'm not following you, I'll follow you, because now I know you. So
right.
Yeah, I have had like those experiences, and even clients of mine, which I didn't realize, they'll sign on with me, we'll get going, and it'll be like months down the line that they tell me like, oh yeah, I started following you like back when you were at CSU in college. I'm like, that was 6 years ago. Like, you've known me for 6 years. I've just known you for 3 months. And it blows my mind. I'm like, why didn't you tell me in your application? Like, hey, I've been following you for a while. But at the same time, I guess I could see if it's intimidating maybe, or they're not sure how I'll receive it. But
well, the message is to everyone, go say hi to Elenoa if you see her at the gym.
Yes.
Don't wait till afterwards and say Elenoa. She appreciates that.
Yeah. Because then I'll really know.
Right. Exactly. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're awesome in a lot of different ways.
Thank you.
And I hope people get that, because obviously you're phenomenally talented at your craft, because you've never lost. But you're right. Yeah. You'll get there. As of now. Yeah. But I think even more impressively, your humility and your perspective on, hey, I'm just me doing the things that I think are right and what I like and what I care about.
Yeah.
That is a profoundly underrated value and aspect to people. And maybe people won't care about it that much, but I think it's awesome. So please continue to be that way. But thanks so much for coming. Thanks for sharing and being open. And I'm sure we will continue to do cool things.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
I appreciate it.